got that Midwest mumble.
All right. Well, yeah, I had a good time. Thank you for letting me into the Art Institute.
Anytime.
I'm definitely gonna have to come back. It segues perfectly into what we're talking about today because I told you my journey getting there, and I needed time. I was like, I need some time to shake off these negative feelings because I don't want to bring all that negativity into this little holy space of art.
Yes.
And I was like, is there a spot where I can just sit and meditate? But then I was thinking about something I learned from Thich Nhat Hanh and his concept of walking meditation. And meditation is just awareness.
Sure.
It's not out-of-body experiences. It's not trying to transcend, and I'm saying that for those who get turned off by anything spiritual. Meditation is paying attention. A lot of people don't know how to pay attention. We live in a world of distractions. And so when it comes to walking meditation, you revel in having a body.
Yes.
You revel in the act of walking. You pay attention to every step as a conscious step. But on top of that, you feed eye hunger. You just look. You don't, like, for instance, what we're sitting on, I don't look at this and say, this is an L-shaped piece of granite that's supposed to be a chair. I'm going to say, no, this is just an object that's feeding my eyes. I investigate. And the more you look at something, it opens up to you. It becomes beautiful. Which leads me to what I actually wanted to talk to you about, Miss Tracey of the Art Institute.
Oh, goodness.
Good. I'm so proud of you using your art degree.
They told me not to do it.
Right.
Art history, Japanese studies. What are you going to do with that? Bitch, look where I'm at.
Work at the Art
now.
Institute of
Yeah.
Chicago. That's what you're going to do with that. Right? Yeah. So, what I actually wanted to talk to you is about beauty. But specifically, because, again, I'm about definitions. The word beauty, the definition of beauty has changed. It's come to mean glamour. And in today's society, that definition has become very toxic. And it's become very hard to connect with other people because they're like, well, I'm not glamorous, so obviously I'm not beautiful, I've got nothing to offer. And they bring that feeling into every situation and encounter just because we've changed the definition of beauty. And the Irish theologian, philosopher, and poet, I'm saying all these ands because a lot of people like to segment, but he was a priest for 15 years, then left and decided to just study meditation and living. His name is John O'Donoghue. He died back in 2008. But he has a quote that says, "Beauty isn't all about nice loveliness. Beauty is about a more rounded, substantial becoming, an emerging fullness, a greater sense of grace and elegance, a deeper sense of depth, and also a homecoming for the enriched memory of your unfolding life." Lots of words, lots of pretty and fancy words. But basically he's saying that beauty is more than just glamour. Beauty is a spiritual experience. We are more alive. We feel most alive in the presence of beauty. And we feel the most ourselves in the presence of beauty. And I experienced that when you dropped me off in your favorite gallery, which as everything's just unfolding, I was like, oh yes, I know Tracey's the perfect person to talk about this, because that is a concept that the Japanese have mastered. Satisfying eye hunger. And like doing things for if you eat Japanese food even, it's always served on elegant dishware. You know, it's all about, even Japanese and Chinese fans are about cooling the face and pleasing the eye. And I wanted to get your insight and explore more of this idea of beauty, because, yeah, I believe in this whole, everyone has ended this question of God, which is fine because, you know, but I believe the divine, whatever it is that manifested our consciousness, it's in everything. It's in that moment I was looking at this, I was like, wow, this is quite beautiful, because that's not really just a single tone of gray. There's multiple colors in there. And in that, my heart feels full. I feel most connected with the universe. So I wanted to get your insight. First off, we've been talking about happiness, and you just skip over this question. What is your definition of happiness?
Oh gosh, it's a deceptively simple question, Mark.
Question mark.
Yes, question mark. Now there's a branding idea. I guess to me, my own personal definition your feet. You're shuffling your feet.
Yes, right.
I guess for me, my own personal definition of happiness would be moments of peace or joy, where you have the freedom from whatever it is that might weigh you down or pull you back from experiencing kind of either of those states. That's sort of what I came to when I was thinking about it. But like I said, it's sort of a deceptively simple question, and it's an easy answer to give. I can't say that I've got it all figured out and that it's easy for me. I think it shouldn't have to be this way, and I love that the journey that you're on with this podcast is to try to figure out ways to access happiness or, improve, or, gosh, what am I trying to say? Just be happy more frequently. Personally, I have to work to cultivate happiness. I struggle with sometimes feeling like I can't remember when I was happy, or trying to pull myself out of the idea that I'm not going to be happy, or that I can't be happy if, or whatever qualifying thing. And that's a lie. That's a lie that depression or grief or whatever it is that someone's going through tells you, because you can have joy and you can have peace, but it's a journey. I think we're all having to unlearn a lot of things that we have done to ourselves, or that life has done to us, that we are now protecting ourselves from, where we are preventing ourselves from accessing those feelings and being free to just be in a space where we can be at peace, or feeling free to just be joyful. So, happiness is complicated to me, but worthwhile, worth pursuing.
Definitely. I appreciate how you say, it was something I didn't want to accept. There are a lot of things that we do to ourselves that prevent us from experiencing happiness. And once I accepted that, there's a little bit that I contribute to my unhappiness, that's what put me on this journey. Well, how do I start? At least I'm not the problem. I want to be my own best friend. I want to be the best company I've ever been in, and not, contribute to my own unhappiness in ways that are preventable. And so the room, oh my goodness, you don't even know how fitting that gallery was, especially the fact that it was dimly lit. None of it made sense to me, but I was there for it.
There you go.
And it's like you said, I allowed myself to be in the space. I allowed myself to just be in that moment.
Yeah.
I acknowledged, I was because I skimmed over the sign. I was like, it's dark to prevent natural light. And then, as opposed to trying to figure it out, what exactly am I looking at? I just looked at it.
Yeah.
And I took in everything. The quietness of the space, how it was dimly lit. And then I didn't, I just was there and looked at it. And eventually, all, even the angles of the panels disappeared.
Sure.
And it was just light. And there was a certain depth, and there was a certain, for lack of a better word, mysticism. It felt ethereal. It was something that I technically couldn't touch because it was screaming. Yes. The walls were screaming at me.
Do not touch.
Oh my goodness. And the lady came up to me you're too close, sir. And I'm like, is that what that means? How does it know? How does it know I'm too close? But what about that room? You said that's your favorite gallery, and it's in the Japanese art section of the Art Institute. What about that installation actually calls you?
I mean, I think the Ando Gallery is sort of a special space for some of the reasons that you've described. It's unlike other galleries where you might have a lot of bright lighting. So I think right away, the distinction between most of the other spaces that you are used to in a museum, and then entering something that is so different is really striking. I also think the way that you have to navigate the space, where when you enter the room there are these 16 pillars that sort of partially obscure your view of whatever is on view in the room. So you have to physically navigate this barrier, but also you have this sort of, I don't know, I think it's sort of a magical experience when you can just see little slivers of what it is that you're encountering, and it's not just all at once, but you are approaching the work partially obscured. And I think that there's something about that interruption when you are approaching the object that puts you in a different mind frame for when you actually can navigate through the pillars and arrive there. I think it prepares you to encounter the work differently.
Oh.
And I think that's really special. And I think that that's something that's not totally atypical of Japanese design. You'll see, in a Japanese garden that you have to walk along zigzagging planks or enter through a small doorway and then come back up. There's sort of these moments where you have to really mindfully approach where you're going. And I think that that's special. And I think there's something just very quiet, contemplative, meditative even about that space. It's a great spot to just, sit on that bench and take in a moment of quiet. I think it inspires a quieter atmosphere. You notice people that might be chatting a little louder in a different space, and they come into that room and there's something about it. There's no sign that says, please be extra quiet in this room. But there is something about that space that inspires that sort of contemplative, peaceful vibe. And it's very pleasing. And also being someone that has had a lifelong love affair with Asian design and objects and art. Everything that gets displayed in that room speaks to my aesthetic preferences. Beautiful screens, whatever the object may be. I usually feel very drawn not only to the space, but to whatever is on view in the space as well. It's a special spot in the museum.
It is. It is. It was not at all what I was expecting. Of course, I've been to art museums, I've been to museums, and I was putting myself in that mindset. Very brightly lit. You're in the middle of a room that's very exposed. And when we first walked in there, I was like, I even like that I was obstructed when you were over there enjoying the art. You don't have to, you can pretend like the rest of the museum doesn't exist.
Yeah.
You can just be there with the artwork.
Yeah.
And you're right, we were walking up and I was telling you about my day and I was like, this is what happened. And then you're like, well, this is the space. I was like, oh.
Yeah.
Oh, this?
Yeah.
Oh.
It's special.
And it immediately brought some quietness, brought some calm. The pillars, actually, they struck me because I was thinking of that installation in Washington, D.C. that was about all the black people that were lynched in America. It was just pillars hanging from the ceiling. And you have to walk through all these pillars, essentially. And each pillar represents like 100 people. And so that was my first impression. Having those pillars that we have to walk through, it put me in a very, not somber, I don't know if that's the word I'm looking for,
Sure.
but a somber and contemplative mindset.
Yeah.
So that when I did get there, I was like, well, I've got to walk through these pillars. To get here, I could choose to be upset about my day, or I can accept that I'm in the presence of art, the presence of something beautiful right now.
Yeah.
Well, is there the Greek word for beauty, and of course a lot of other languages have more than one word for anything. Ancient Greece had multiple words for beauty. Two of them that stick out for me was the word kalos, which we use that word for calling, and the word, I'm going to mispronounce this, hora, which we use that word for hour. And the words from Greece that meant beauty were essentially, hora is the way you would describe a piece of fruit that's ripe. It's beautiful because it's within it's like, what does it say? It's at one's hour. Like when you reach your full potential, it's perfectly ripe. It's beautiful. So as opposed to saying that's a ripe fruit, no, that's a beautiful fruit.
Sure.
And the word kalos stuck out to me because it literally is the word we use to get called or calling. And it's that idea that beauty calls. You know, is there any beauty in being human? You know? Because I know we talked a little bit about the calling part, because even walking up to that gallery, it was calling you in.
Sure.
But in the whole idea of coming into one's own, or the hour, the hora, in which a ripe piece of fruit, you've eaten a piece of fruit at the right time.
Yeah.
You know, you're like, wow, this strawberry is perfectly in season. And that is a beautiful moment. And the strawberry smells beautiful, it looks beautiful. Can that be applied to being human? Is there anything beautiful about being human?
Gosh, it would be sad if there wasn't. I mean, I think so. I should have called the curator. I just move spreadsheets around. Edit that out.
You silly. Let me find a different one.
No, it's a good one. Let me sit on that for a bit.
On that, with all of that, being yourself at this hour is beautiful.
Yeah.
That's what I got when I was looking over that. I was like, okay, so who I am at this hour, as long as I'm fully myself, 100% myself, I've come into who I am. I'm trying to tell myself theoretically, but there's beauty in that.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, yeah, I think there's sort of definitely a broader definition of beauty than especially glamour, as you brought up before, but yeah, I think there is something beautiful in special moments, and maybe even those moments that I talked about before, where you have a moment of just unbridled joy or perfect peace. There's something special about moments of connection between people, moments where you grow as a person or realize something about yourself. I think there's a lot of things in the human experience that would qualify as beautiful.
You had mentioned, because we're sitting underneath, I can fill you in on the history of this portion of the Art Institute, but it does harken to a little bit. I do love the floating roof. I could tell you guys about that in another episode, but it does harken to the prairie-style architecture of Frank Lloyd Wright.
Yeah.
And he is one who, like the Japanese, he hides the front door, and it's very cramped right when you walk in. But then it opens up to reveal the house or the home. A lot of people see, with this whole idea of beauty as glamour, and I know we're outside of the Art Institute, and not a lot of people have access to something like this, and it's easy to think that beauty is stuck in these fancy granite, I guess we'll call these chairs, I don't know what you want to call these, or stuck in that Japanese exhibit that I was, oh my goodness, immediately pulled me back into the here and now. I feel immediately better. Are there ways to find? Is beauty and art stuck in that one thing? And are there ways? Before I ask that question, there's a precursor. Do you believe art, or the appreciation of beauty in any form, like being able to just sit here and stare at a piece of granite and be like, wow, this is beautiful? Is that something that's reserved for the elite that don't have bills or, systemic issues to grapple with? Or is that something that everyone, or is it even necessary? Or is that just, a pastime? Am I about to waste an episode talking about something that only the 1% can appreciate?
I think if you have a very narrow definition of art and beauty, and certainly some people do, then maybe. Certainly there are types of objects, mediums, arguably certain aesthetics, points of access that are not accessible. We talked earlier about people feeling like they could afford to go to an art museum at all, or feel comfortable feeling like an art museum is a place for them, even on a free day. And that's real. There are certain types of art that are not accessible. There are certain types of experiences that are not accessible. Even through a perceived sense of I'm welcome here, or this is for me.
Yeah.
That being said, I would think it's a very, very small portion of people that don't find some sort of art or beauty or make it for themselves in their own experience. And there might be some people who would look at that and say, well, that's not art to me, or I don't like that. But I don't know that many people that can't find a song that they love on the radio, or hum a song to themselves, or make a pattern in the dirt with a stick, or draw something on a sheet of lined paper. Find something that they think is a beautiful image and make it their phone background. I think everyone seeks out, maybe not with an eye for curating an entire home or aesthetic or whatever, but I think people seek out the things that they're drawn to visually and surround themselves with that to some degree, even if it's not a priority. I think that art is something that is distinctly human and brings us together, can create a sense of community, can really cultivate that happiness in feeling like you're at home, or you're with that community, or you're enjoying something that makes you happy. I think that art is for everyone. And I think that applying judgment to what art is valuable, I think we need to be critical. I think we need to point out where things might be problematic or harmful. But I think that we could do with less snobbery and gatekeeping. If we want to argue that that's not art, or that's not for someone, I just think that that's a really backwards way of thinking.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that there's something for everyone, and I would encourage people to take the time and think about what kinds of art brings them joy or peace or makes them think, what they've encountered that was special to them, and maybe challenge people to go and seek that out a little bit more. There are free events, there are community events, there are theater performances on YouTube. I mean, you don't have to leave your couch. I think we could all do with a little more of that in our lives. Me included.
I feel that. And again, we're on this. This is my journey, so I'm not an expert. That's where I've found myself since I was a small child. The idea of anything on my wall was just unheard of, other than like beige paint.
Sure.
Just because I rent a lot, not
Sure.
because I wanted to be beige. The idea of having artwork, like and I've always been like, oh, I should buy some artwork and put it up. And I'm just like, since I've never fed that part of me, I've been always like, oh, well, I don't really know what I want. I don't want to buy something just to have something.
Sure.
And in small ways, you might have seen how I've been changing in small ways, from muted tones to a bit more brighter things. I have buying things with patterns, wearing different colors.
Yeah.
Just because, like, when I catch glimpses of myself, I'm like, wow, there's different textures, there's
Sure.
different colors. Yes, I can't make it to an art museum all the time, but my plant is a work of art.
Absolutely.
Chicago has an amazing history. It has a lot of history when it comes to public housing, but there are a lot of people who, the battery died. There are a lot of people who have been doubly impoverished by society, in that not only is I'm trying not to shit on Rockford, but there's some ugly parts of Rockford, right?
Sure.
And there are a lot of people who, like, even not even talk about Chicago, there are a lot of people who just, not even on a material level, on a visible level, they live in an ugly environment.
Sure.
They, be it, the atmosphere, the culture, or just not taken care of. It's just run down. And that's where I was leading into how Frank Lloyd Wright. It would be nice to live in a Frank Lloyd Wright. Of course you would feel great every day. Can you kind of map that journey of how, you went from the elegant and beautiful Rockford, choosing to go into art history, and how has that fed into your sense of self and I assume you're doing this because it feeds into a sense of happiness.
Yeah.
And can you map that journey of how it became a, sort of a gateway? I'm trying to stop and not use spiritual practice,
sure.
but sort of a gateway towards you getting a better understanding of yourself. Because spirituality is just asking yourself difficult questions. And then, of course, art is like, do I like this?
Yeah.
Can you map that journey for us and how that... Yeah. how that came to be.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I guess for me, and this, you talk to other people that go to art school, and it's like, well, I always liked art, but I did always like art. My parents, I think, prioritized exposing me to art. They would take me to symphony concerts when my mom could get tickets through work. My dad worked as a graphic designer and photographer, and he's always making something, even if it's just like a model car or something, or out in nature taking photographs. So I think just I had an awareness and an appreciation for that growing up. I also felt comfortable in art classes. Expressing myself that way. I enjoyed that activity. I enjoyed learning about design principles. I like watching interior decorating shows. I mean, all of it. I think also, outside of just really feeling myself being drawn to the aesthetics that called to me in a way that felt really powerful. I think there's something about the community of art, and there are so many art communities. There's the very contemporary, challenging, conceptual or performative art that you would see at a very expensive gallery, all the way down to communities of crudely drawn fan art on the internet. I mean, there's a community around a lot of aesthetics, but I think you tend to find in the art world people that are creative, that think about the world a little bit differently. You find more people that are maybe outcast or queer or whatever it may be, and I think that I found a home or felt comfortable. I feel better being around artists than spaces with than the normies, than spaces. I feel good when I'm in spaces full of those people.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think for me it was just a natural progression of trying different things in school and in life and finding that these sort of quiet, scholarly, beautiful pursuits brought me the most peace and joy. And so I pursued a passion degree, and I went after learning as much as I could about art, and specifically Asian or Japanese art. And I just got as far as my undergraduate degree, and I learned that as much as I loved learning about these things, I did not need my life to be one of a scholar. So at that point, it didn't make sense to pursue a doctorate and go into that field. So I instead went the arts administration route, and I can sort of use a variety of other sort of administrative skills to help support art, which I think is important, and support access to art. And that's sort of how that came about.
You actually said some things that helped something click for me. Again, we were talking about how beauty calls. That's also a John O'Donohue quote. And Alice Walker, who wrote the novel The Color Purple, which if anyone hasn't read it, it definitely should. But one of the characters in that book, play, musical, movie, says to Celie, I believe it pisses God off when we walk past the color purple in a field and not notice it.
Yeah.
And what I heard from you is that you've just kind of been on a pursuit. It isn't like you're like, oh, I know what beauty is and this is what I want to do. Something was calling you, and you've been on this pursuit for this beauty that feeds you.
Yeah.
Would you say
Yeah,
that's the case?
I agree. I think it's very motivating. I don't know that I think there is a trade-off. Unfortunately, in America, we don't value art as we should.
Or beauty.
Yes, absolutely. Or education and healthcare. I'll get off my soapbox. But there's not a ton of funding. I did not get an art history degree expecting to be a wealthy person, but that's not what I want out of life. What I want out of life, and what I want out of my work, which is so much of our lives, is to feel good about where I'm working and to feel like what I'm doing matters. And, I guess someone cynical could argue looking at, extremely expensive pieces of art on a wall is not so crucial, but it matters to me, it matters to a lot of people.
And I feel like that's also very reductive, because we're looking at a very expensive piece of art on the ground, which is this building. We're not too far. We're not too far from Buckingham Fountain, which is such a very extravagant piece of art that's wet.
Yes, yeah. And even if it's not an expensive piece of art, even if it's just the design on your shirt, I mean,
Exactly.
being aware of these aesthetic things that let us express who we are when we make a choice to incorporate it into our life, or simply taking the time to be mindful and notice that something is beautiful, and the benefit that we have simply just from that moment of mindfulness. I just think that that's extremely important, and that's motivating to me enough that that's what I wanted to do with my life, and that keeps me engaged in my work, and it feels worthwhile.
I appreciate that. Yeah, definitely. I'm not ashamed that I'm having too much fun staring at this piece of granite.
It's beautiful. It's mesmerizing.
It really is. And if people are able to just take that moment to appreciate, one, you're here. Don't ask me how. I don't know. You're here. And while you're here, it's time to appreciate the beautiful things. Do you have any, last question, I already asked, is beauty necessary? Did I ask how it fit into your happiness?
I mean, maybe I described a little of that already, but I think, for me, it's always been in a way that I can't really explain why, it's been deeply important to me. The aesthetics that appeal to me have always drawn, how do I say this in one sentence that you can use in a podcast?
Oh, I can always say that piece.
The aesthetics that I am drawn to, I have always been drawn to very deeply in a way that I can't necessarily explain why. But it is profoundly important to me to experience these things. And they give me those moments of peace or those moments of joy that I use to describe what happiness means to me. And it can be something as simple as contemplating the pattern here on this chair, or the way that the rain has washed some dirt across a surface, or the way that a painter has expertly applied paint. Or it can be joy. It can be the joy of singing Whitney Houston on the street with my friends.
Yes, right?
It can be the joy of, watching a Miyazaki movie and taking in the beautiful animation and background sequences and sweeping musical score. Mm-hmm. It can be something extremely sophisticated or very mundane, but I feel deeply impacted by that. And it allows me to access those moments of happiness in ways that a lot of things in life can't. I was talking to Cole, Cole's my husband, we just adopted a new kitty. Yes. Her name's Esme. Yes. And we were talking about, is it shallow that we picked the most beautiful cat at the shelter? Should we have picked a different cat? But I was like, I was talking to him, and we picked her for other reasons. She's, there's many reasons to adopt. Please adopt. But there's something I was telling him about looking down and seeing an extremely beautiful cat that brings me so much joy. Mm-hmm. And there's not a lot of things in life, and I need to work hard to cultivate more, but there's not a lot of things in life, just day to day, that bring me this
simple joy.
Huge spike in joy.
Yes.
Just like uncomplicated joy. Mm-hmm. And I don't access that a lot. But when I look down at this beautiful little creature, it makes me happy. So yes, beauty in all things, nature or art.
Or pets or movies.
Yeah.
That's one thing I love about T'Challa. I know I said the last question, but I remember there was one on Twitter. Yeah. But segue, the one thing I like about T'Challa, you already know, he's gorgeous. But
he is.
My favorite thing to do is just go right in front of his face, because he'll start sniffing my eyebrow. And then I just stare at him. I was like, look at your cute little mouth.
I love it. You gotta get up close.
It makes me so happy. But what started this idea of beauty and eye hunger was because I recently got into anime.
Yeah.
You understand why. That's neither here nor there. But yes, Princess Mononoke was the first one I saw.
Yeah.
And I was like, I never understood why are people into anime. And I just finished watching Ultraman and all these other things. And it's literally appreciating the time it takes for people to make something beautiful.
Sure.
For me, Princess Mononoke, like if you just see any of the Studio Ghibli films, it's just, they're all works of art. And it's extemporaneous. It's for no reason.
Yes.
It doesn't have to be that detailed. And that's why I appreciate it. Anime.
I love anime.
Has the beauty of anime. How does that fit into your happiness?
Gosh, I mean, I think, again, there's no explanation for why anime or Japanese aesthetics speak to me in particular. There are people that specialize in a lot of fields in art, and there are people that are enthusiastic about a lot of different types of aesthetics. So I can't really explain why anime or why Japan, but I've always been drawn to the culture. I've found the food, the aesthetics, even just mannerisms. I don't know. Something about it really I'm really drawn to it. I think for me, anime also is something nostalgic. It's something that I discovered at a young age when there weren't a lot of other things that I found as exciting. And here was this gateway to a culture that was so unlike mine, to a history that is so much more ancient than ours, to mythology that is very different than ours. Even just, encountering a kimono for the first time. What is this? What are these patterns? And then going on to learn that there's symbolism in the colors or the design elements that might be chosen. I think I was just really interested in that. Everything from, Sailor Moon was probably the first one, and then Inuyasha, and then Miyazaki films, which I think you could argue whether or not they actually fit into the anime genre, but I think
it's still Japanese art.
Yes, I think so. I think there's some snobbishness in the world about it, and to that I want to say it's no different than any other media. Like, a handful of it is going to be really special art. A good smattering of it is going to be good or okay, and yeah, there's going to be a lot of junk out there, but there's a lot of junk out there anyway.
Yes.
There's junk on American TV. You can't tell me there's not.
But junk.
So, I think people want to write it off because they don't get it. I think there's an anime for everyone.
Yeah.
I do believe there is an anime series or film for everyone. You just have to say, I like X genre, and find a well-reviewed anime in that genre and give it a try.
Yes.
But I think for me, like, growing up, falling in love, and discovering that this culture that I was going to have a lifelong love affair with, to go on to do a study abroad trip, to pursue a passion degree in, to I'm not working in the Japanese art department, but you can bet I spend a lot of my time in those galleries, appreciating those objects. There was an end to this sentence. I think for me it ties back to a nostalgia from my youth. It ties to this indescribable connection that I have to a culture. It ties to a sense of lightness and fun. I had fun with my friends as a kid, and I have fun with my friends now. Like, did you watch this episode? Oh my gosh, this happened. This movie's so great, isn't it? Like, I think it's that connection piece too that we talked about earlier, how art can bring people together. It's really multifaceted for me.
It's real meta.
I love it because it's beautiful, and I love it because it's brought something to my life that's meaningful in terms of my relationships, in terms of my career and my academic career. It's been a big part of my life, and I am no longer in a stage where I'm going to give in to people's snobbishness. I'm just going to say I really love anime, and I think everybody should give it a try because it's fun.
Yes.
Have some fun.
Yes. And there's such small moments that can just leave you in just awe and wonder.
Yeah.
Another meta, feeding off what you just said, the appreciation of art leads to a deeper connection with self and a deeper connection with others, which in itself can be seen as a work of art.
Yeah.
It just turns your life into a beautiful work of art.
Yeah.
Fine.
See, we answered that question from earlier.
Ah.
There's the beauty.
Yeah, there's the beauty.
There's the beauty in being human.
High five! Look at us.
Did it.
We're
We
awesome.
did it.
Well, my eyes are a bit hungry, and since we're downtown, figured we'd be done and walk around a bit. Is that
Yeah,
okay?
let's go look at the beautiful things there are to see.
Yes,
And
all these skyscrapers, the parks.
and the flowers are blooming. Let's take a moment to do some mindful walking and really observe
Right?
what nature is providing for us today.
Because there's the color purple right next to me, and
It's
I didn't
beautiful.
notice it until just now.
It's beautiful. Yes. It's so easy to just miss things, but it's important to take that time. I think it's really important to take that time to stop checking out and check in and feed that.
Yes.
Let yourself have that. What do you notice? What do you like? What do you not like? Why do you think that might be?
Mm-hmm.
Or if you don't want to get into it that much, just what do you see? What is around you? Stop and what are, 5 things you can see? What's one thing that can stand out to you? That just on its own can really stop wherever you're at, whatever anxiety train that you're riding. That can pull the brakes right there. And that can provide a really tangible improvement right now in your life. Just stopping to appreciate and feed your senses.
Thank you for your time. I want to say this last part so I can remember to put it in the podcast, but beauty doesn't slap you in the face. Beauty calls. And it's up to you to see if you're ready and willing to answer.
I love that.
I got that from what you said. So
I
that's
love
our
that.
quote.
Oh, look at us.
Well, thank you, Tracey.
Hey.
So can you say hello for me?
Hello.
Okay, thanks.